You'll see why in a minute, but I actually want to start it in August 2010. I just finished my second book on the connection between physical health and mental health, and I was really happy. It was a Sunday morning, and I just remember how happy I was on the way to church with my wife and daughter, and when we got there, I told Tana, my wife, they said, "Why don't you drop Chloe off at Children's Church? I'll go save us seats." And as I walked toward the sanctuary, I saw hundreds of donuts for sale for charity. And it really irritated me. Because there's not one healthy thing about donuts. And then right around the corner, there was bacon and sausage cooking on the grill. And my brain is like, seriously. And right before I walked into the sanctuary, it's a huge church in Newport Beach, California, where I live. They're cooking hundreds of hot dogs for after church. And now I'm furious because I begin to see I'm going to church to get my soul fed. These bastards are trying to kill me. And then as I sat down, the minister started talking about the ice cream festival they had the night before. And now I'm psychotic. I'm so angry that when my wife finds me in church, I'm typing on my phone, and she hates this thing. She thinks of it as the other woman. And she gave me that look, you know, that only your wife can give you, like, why the hell are you on that thing in church? Don't you know you're going to hell? And so I showed her what I was typing. Go to church and get donuts, bacon, sausage, hot dogs, ice cream. They have no idea they are sending people to heaven early. Save them, then kill them. This is not the plan. And that Sunday, I have no idea what the minister said. I prayed that God would use me to change the culture of food at church. And you'll see throughout this 20 minutes together, I have an attitude problem. And during the prayer, I'm like, this is just the dumbest prayer you've ever prayed. How would that ever happen? You're a psychiatrist, you do imaging, you're trying to change your profession by actually adding medical information rather than diagnosing, you know, mental health issues based on symptom clusters. That sounds stupid. But during the prayer, I just talked back to my attitudinal self and I said, I don't care, it's my prayer. This is wrong. And so what I want to tell you is intention matters. 2 weeks later, no lie, it's exactly how it happened. Pastor Rick Warren from Saddleback Church called me. I'd never met Pastor Warren. Some of you may know him. He's the author of The Purpose-Driven Life, our generation's best-selling book. Saddleback Church is one of the largest churches in the world with 16 campuses. He'd seen me on public television. I talked about something called the dinosaur syndrome, big body, little brain. You're going to become extinct based on research that I'd done. And he said, Dr. Amen, I'm fat. My church is fat. Will you help me? And I'm like, you had me from hello. Together with my friend Mark Hyman, we created a health program for Saddleback Church called the Daniel Plan. It's a church-based healthcare initiative based on 5 pillars: faith, why do you care, food, fitness, focus, which we'll talk about today, which is brain health, and friends. You get sick together, just as you saw at church, or you get better together. The first week in January 2011, 15,000 people signed up. And the first year, they lost 250,000 pounds. Better energy, focus, creativity, sleep, mood, reductions in stress, blood pressure. And now literally thousands of churches around the world are doing the Daniel Plan. We wrote a book together. It was an international bestseller. Intention works. But make no mistake, you're in a war for the health of your brain. Everywhere you go, someone is trying to shove bad food down your throat that will kill you early. The real weapons of mass destruction are highly processed, pesticide-sprayed, high glycemic, low-fiber, food-like substances stored in plasticized containers that are destroying the health of America. ISIS has nothing on our food industry. Those same companies use neuroscience tricks to hook your pleasure centers. I was a little disturbed when the labor secretary was actually the CEO of Carl's Jr. who did this ad, because what they're doing is they're making you believe that if you eat this, that you will have a body like this. Or if you eat this, she will want you. She will not want you. It's a lie. Tech companies continue to create addictive gadgets that steal our attention and distract us from our loved ones. Microsoft just published a study that said the human attention span is now 8 seconds. A goldfish is 9 seconds. This is evolution going the wrong way. A study in the Harvard Business Review said that only 10% of managers have both focus and energy. It's a war. And the war has consequences. Your bad habits have consequences. We know Alzheimer's disease is expected to quadruple in the next 35 years. There is no cure for it on the horizon, and 50% of people 85 and older will be diagnosed with it. And the really bad news, what we now know based on imaging, it starts in your brain literally decades before you have any symptoms. So this 59-year-old woman I diagnosed with Alzheimer's disease, these are SPECT scans, it's the imaging studies we do at our clinics around the United States. The image on the left is a healthy scan, the image on the right is a 59-year-old woman who has Alzheimer's disease. Odds are she had negative changes in her brain in her 20s. So those of you that are waiting to get sick before you get serious about being well, you want to rethink that. In addition, depression has gone up 400% since 1987, and it is one of the major risk factors for Alzheimer's disease, as is diabetes. Brand new study showed that 50% of the United States, and this is because of the food we eat, we are either diabetic or pre-diabetic. And diabetes damages every organ in your body. It's not just a blood sugar problem. It turns out to be a blood vessel problem, and any organ that's deprived of blood flow is damaged. And then, as I mentioned, I published 2 studies that said as your weight goes up, the actual physical size and function of your brain goes down. And with 2/3 of Americans overweight, 1/3 of us obese, it is the biggest brain drain in the history of the United States. In fact, it's now considered a national security crisis because 70% of people who try to sign up for the military are rejected, and the number one reason is weight problems. The exciting thing that I discovered is the answer is actually not to see these as separate disorders, but rather different expressions of the same unhealthy lifestyle that have exactly the same cure, what we call the brain warrior's way. So let me talk about what we do at Amen Clinics. We have 6 clinics around the US. And the first thing we do is look at your brain, because if we don't look, we don't know. And in 1991, I started to do this study called brain SPECT imaging. SPECT looks at blood flow and activity. It looks at how your brain works. So here's an example of a healthy scan. Compare it to someone who was a drug addict. The real reason not to use drugs, they damage your brain. When I saw these scans, they were so awful, I took them home to my 4 children and effectively induced anxiety disorders in all 4 of them when it came to drug abuse. And then I thought, well, I should scan myself. And when I scanned myself at the age of 37, it looked terrible. I'm like, why does my brain look so bad? And I played football in high school. And I had meningitis as a young soldier, and I wasn't sleeping, and I had a lot of bad brain habits. And when I saw my brain, I think everything I've done in my life since then was to make it better. And 20 years later, my brain is fuller, fatter, happier. And the reason is, so when I saw my scan the first time, I developed a concept I call brain envy. See, I'm a psychiatrist by training, and so I had to read Freud. And Freud had this concept of penis envy. And but he was wrong. He was about 2.5 feet too low in the body. What you really need to care about is the 3 pounds of fat between your ears. And so, as I developed brain envy, I developed this program to do everything I could to have a better brain and a better life. And in fact, I'm so obsessed with it that I got divorced in 2000, and I told myself if I ever got married again, I'm going to scan, the most important part of this woman's body I want to see is her brain. So when I met my wife almost 12 years ago, about 2 weeks into our relationship, she's really cute, she's really smart, I really liked her, and I said, "You haven't seen the clinic yet." So she came, she agreed to get scanned, put her in the camera. She had a great brain. So I married her, and it's worked out really well. And the rule in my house is if you date one of my children, for more than 4 months, you have to get scanned. You haven't seen the clinic yet. Don't you want to see the clinic? And so my son-in-laws both have been scanned, and they got to stay and procreate. So the imaging tells us if a brain is healthy, if it's aging too fast, if you have something like Alzheimer's disease brewing in your brain, if it's been injured, if it works too hard or not hard enough. And ultimately, how do you know unless you look? So I've been trying to change the profession by, psychiatry by, come on, you have to look. If you don't look, you don't know. Stop lying about it. Imaging actually completely changed the discussion around mental health for me. I learned no one wants to see a psychiatrist. No one wants to be labeled as defective or abnormal, but everybody wants a better brain. So what if mental health was really brain health? And our work was honored last year in Discover magazine. We were listed as one of the top 100 stories in science. Tesla was number 18. 20 was the discovery of a new dinosaur species. And our work, brain scans may lead to better diagnoses, was 19. We're really excited about that. So imaging is really important. But here's what's new in my life. If you want to keep your brain healthy for as long as possible, you need to prevent or treat all of the things that steal it. And I've developed a mnemonic. I have a new book coming out in November called Memory Rescue. And it's based on this really one simple idea that if you want to keep your memory, your brain and your memory healthy for as long as possible, or even reverse it if you have brain damage, you have to attack all of the risk factors that I put in this mnemonic, Bright Minds. And I'm running out of time, so I can't go over all of it. But B is for blood flow. Low blood flow is the #1 predictor of Alzheimer's disease. Retirement and aging, when you stop learning, your brain starts dying. Inflammation damages every organ in your body. Genetics, if it runs in your family, you need to be serious now, not 10 years from now. Head trauma, just a huge issue in our country. Toxins like smoking, drugs, alcohol, mold. Mental health issues like depression triples the risk of Alzheimer's disease. Immunity and infections, we could go on and on about that. Hormone deficiencies, diabetes, which is a combination of being diabetic and overweight, sleep problems. And we have interventions for each of these things. In fact, for inflammation, low levels of omega-3 fatty acids are associated with a smaller brain. And so how easy is it to eat more fish or take fish oil supplements? Genetics, if you have this in your family. Curry or curcumins actually been shown to decrease the plaques thought to be responsible for Alzheimer's disease. Head trauma, you obviously have to protect yourself. Toxins, there's this very cool app you should download called Think Dirty. It lets you scan all of your products and see how toxic they are on a scale of 1 to 10, how quickly they're killing you. Mental health issues, we call it kill the ants, the automatic negative thoughts. Immunity, boost your vitamin D level. Hormone replacement, I'm a huge fan of it. Diabetes, you have to change your diet. It's just so important to get your food right. And sleep is just critical. So let me show you how this works. As Mel said, I did the world's first and largest study on active and retired NFL players at a time when the NFL was lying. And I knew they were lying. And so we got 200 NFL players and showed high levels of damage in more than 90% of them. A 9-year-old should have figured that out. That's not hard. Brain is soft, skull is hard, skull has sharp bony ridges. But my heart was never to go, okay, you guys have a problem. My heart was to fix it. And so we put our players on this program. So here's the level of damage that we saw. We published this study, but on our program, 80% of them showed improvement, often radical improvement. We were so happy about that. One of my players, Duval Love, his brain just looked awful. But this is his brain 12 months later. And, oh, by the way, he lost 110 pounds because he didn't want to be a dinosaur. You know, big body, little brain, you're going to become extinct. But my favorite story in all of this, in 1980, when I told my dad I was going to be a psychiatrist, he asked me why I didn't want to be a real doctor. So that's the kind of relationship we had. He's a very blunt person and not all that polite. I'm like, who says that to their child? And then when I started looking at the brain and realized I had to get physically healthy and I start nudging him to get healthy, he goes, oh great, you're a nut doctor. And now you're a health nut. He said, what's with all the nuts? But 3 years ago, he had mold in his house. He's 85. And then he developed a chronic cough, and then a heart arrhythmia, and then heart failure. And now he's depressed because this person who's been going to work for 70 years, who was chairman of the board of a $4 billion company, is a very powerful person. Now he can't work. And one day he looked at me and he said, Danny, I'm sick of being sick. What do you want me to do? Now, this is a guy who used to say, I don't get heart attacks, I give them. And here he is in the chair. And I said, Pop, I want you to do everything because without you, I'm going to be really sad. And he's so stubborn, he did everything. He assessed his brain, he got his important numbers checked, he's texting me food labels.